Hello. Thanks, everybody. Thank you all for your interest and participation in our exciting session for Navigation Locomotion 2, which means we have another batch of 4 exciting papers related to VR and AR navigation locomotion, of course. So in our session, we will have 4 papers. 2 of them come from ISMAR this year. The second one will be the remote presentation. We also have 2 exciting invited papers published at TVCG, which is the 3rd and 4th presentation. So while we are preparing the presentation, we will start with the first paper, which is exploring the effects of spatial constraints and curvature for 3D piloting virtual environment. The presenter will be Xuning to present. By the way, just to introduce myself, this is Xinan from New York University. If you have any questions regarding the session, feel free to contact me, either here or online. Thank you. Take a stage.
Hello everyone, I'm Xining, a third-year undergraduate student at Xi'an University in Suzhou, China. I'm honored to present our paper, exploring the effects of spatial constraints and curvature for 3D piloting in virtual environments. My co-author is Xinan, Yushi, Wenxuan, Yue Liu, and Professor Hai-Ning Liang. As VR becomes increasingly integrated into our daily lives, understanding how we navigate in 3D environments is more crucial than ever. Navigating an object from a starting point to an endpoint along predefined paths is a fundamental task in our daily lives. This task is pervasive in applications like racing games, cascading menus, and lasso tools. Accurately predicting the time users take to complete steering tasks is important for designers aiming to create efficient 3D scenarios. In the field of human-computer interaction, several models have been proposed to predict user performance in GUI operations. Fistlow predicts the selection time based on the target distance and size. Extending this concept, steering law predicts the movement time for trajectory-based tasks, such as navigating along a path. Steering law proposed that movement time MT has linear relationship with the index of difficulty, ID, calculated as the path length A divided by the path width W, express ID equal A over W. This model means that steering through a narrower or longer path is more difficult, which requires a longer movement time. Numerous studies have proposed modifications to the steering law based on different path conditions, explore lots of factors affecting human behavior, such as path cascading, corner, scale, and curvature. However, with the rising popularity of virtual reality, there's a gap in extending the steering law to 3D space. Previous work primarily focusing on 2D interaction environments, like tables, laptops, and smartphones. The closed attempt have simulated 3D environments using 2D plane, applying weighted Euclidean model to account for height and width constraints. So, the effects of steering law in 3D space remains uncertain, especially for more complex path conditions. Our work aims to address this gap by exploring the following research question. First, can the performance of piloting control be modeled using the steering law? Second, can user behavior and performance in piloting control tasks be influenced by the height and width of the tunnel? Third, do width and height have different effects on user behavior when the tunnel is curved? At last, if width and height exhibit varying effects at different radii for curvature, could a new model be proposed to elucidate the behavioral pattern? To test the applicability of the steering law in 3D space, we designed an experiment by using an Oculus headset to create a VR environment. Participants used an Xbox controller to pilot a virtual aircraft, simulating real aircraft controls. The left stick controls movement in an XZ plane, forward, backward, left, and right. Forward, backward, left, and right. The right stick controls vertical movement and rotation. Up, down, turn left, oops, and turn right. We test 3 widths, 3 heights, and 2 path lengths. With large dimension, participants found navigation easier. With smaller dimension increased the challenge. Each participant was required to fly the virtual aircraft through a string tunnel, resulting in 54 data points. The key factors were the tunnel's width, height, and length. They were instructed to navigate from a starting point to destination without stopping or colliding with the tunnel walls. Any error required them to restart the trail. This setup allowed us to examine how spatial constraints affect 3D navigation performance. Our results indicated that with significant influence movement time, while height showed a tendency to have an effect. We fitted both the original steering law and the Euclidean model to our data. We can see the Euclidean model performed better with an R-square of 0.968, meaning it explained 96.8% of the variability in movement time. Width had a more significance than height, as supported by the eta coefficient analyzed. Eta equals 0.296. The eta coefficient represents the weighting between width and height in our model. Interestingly, we found even in large dimension, participants also adjust their height, likely adopting a safety strategy to avoid potential error. In study 2, we explored more complex scenarios involving curved paths. We tested 126 conditions combining 3 widths, 3 heights, 2 path lengths, and 7 curvature radii. Each path consisted of 3 zones: start, calculation, and end. We want to focus our analysis on the curve calculation zone. Our general results revealed significant main effects of width, height, and curvature radius on movement time. Interaction effects among these variables is also significant. To address our third research question, we fitted the steering law model for each curvature separately. The model showed a good fit for each curvature values. For example, R-square equals 0.954, 0.915. We can find at extreme values, nearly straight or highly curved paths had minimal impact compared to width. Width was the primary influencer on movement time. As curvature transitioned from height to straight, the influence of height increased. This suggests that the curvature changes the relative importance of width and height. You can see that the eta coefficient varied with the curvature radius follow a normal distribution curve. These findings highlight the need of a new model that integrates curvature, width, height to better predict user behavior in 3D navigation tasks. To improve our predictive capabilities, we developed a new model. First, we converted the weighted Euclidean model into a velocity-based model to better account dynamic movement. Second, inspired by Montenzer's work, we integrated the curvature radius into the velocity model. Third, we replaced the constant eta value with a curvature-dependent parameter derived from our normal distribution curve. At last, this resulted in a comprehensive model that accounted for path width, height, length, and curvatures. We evaluated the new model using nonlinear regression and AIC. AIC means a measure that balances model fit and complexity to prevent overfitting. Lower AIC value indicate a better model. R-square means represent the proportion of variance explains the model. Higher R-square values indicate a better fit. We used 126 samples from study 2. Our new model showed a 52.6% improvement in AIC and a 16.6% improvement in R-square compared to the baseline Euclidean model. To further validate our model and address potential vertical movement bias, we conducted study 3. We introduced the vertical flight with curvature, requiring participants to adjust vertical movement more frequently. The equipment and procedures were consistent with the study 2. We collected 126 data points too. After nonlinear regression, our model maintained a high fit with an R-square of 0.872, demonstrating its robustness in complex scenarios. In conclusion, our work advanced the understanding of 3D piloting tasks in virtual environments by demonstrating that steering law can be adapted to model user behavior in 3D navigation tasks. developing a new model that integrates width, height, length, and curvature, providing a more accurate prediction of user performance. Validating the model across different scenarios, including straight flight, horizontal flight, vertical flight, enhancing its applicability. Many games and 3D scenarios require users to navigate through limited space, such as It Takes Two and GTA 5. If developers understand the challenges of navigating in 3D environments, they can design better game tasks. We believe our findings provide valuable insights. Designers and researchers can use these insights to create more efficient 3D scenarios. Thanks to you for your attention. I'm happy to answer any question you may have.
I thank the speaker. Some questions. Feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions.
Thanks, Babu from Clemson University. Thanks for this presentation. Could you tell me a little bit about how, for instance, the steering law is different than cornering law in navigation? Have you heard of cornering law?
Sorry, I don't
cornering law is another application of Fitts law to essentially navigation and movement. And so cornering law has sort of similar constructs with some of the elements that you're proposing. That's one question. So I would look up sort of cornering law to see how much overlap there is between your models and the cornering law model that has been applied to navigation and movement. Second question is, so do you take into account what the user did and rather than what was the variables such as amplitude and distance and width that was presented to the user? Is there a notion of effective index of difficulty rather than index of difficulty based on what was presented here in your models?
I'm so sorry, could you repeat it clearly?
Instead of taking into account what was presented, do you have sort of a notion of effective movement time? So is there an effective index of difficulty type measure in your models where you take into account what they actually did instead of what was presented?
Yeah. If I understand correctly, I observe the participants in the higher index of difficulty will slow their speed to adjust their height or width to avoid potential error. So they will lower their speed. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, hello. Thanks for your interesting presentation. But however, I think your model, this research is a little bit idealistic. So with just only few variables, but however, the real navigation task is more complex. So does this model can be fixable for the complex navigation situation? Yeah, thank you.
That's a really large question. First, understanding the relationship between these parameters can enhance user experience. And I totally agree with you. In real world or more complex scenarios, the parameter about width, length, and curvature is the most basically conditions. We have lots of other factors like air resisting, lighting, direction, visual feedback, audio feedback affect human behavior. So I think our work is a framework, and we can add some factors later in our future work. Yes, thanks.
So you mentioned it's available for your future work, right? So
yeah.
What kind of variables you are consider about? Like you mentioned lighting or another virtual feedback? Yeah.
Yeah, because the working scenario only considers the path length and width constraints. So in this work, we extend it to 3D space, so we as height constraints. So in the next work, or we will maybe as a user's age, even user's eyesight, be the parameter to add into the model. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Due to time being, if you have additional questions, I believe the authors will be here right after the session. Feel free to have offline chat. And then we will have to move to our next talk. Thank you for the presentation. So the second presentation, due to various reasons, will be on a remote talk via video, and the author will be on Zoom here to answer questions if you have any. The second paper will be exploring the effects of viewpoint height and fluctuation on walking perception in panoramic tours. The presenter will be Hongqiu Luan. Thank you.
Everyone, I would like to share with you some of our research progresses on exploring the effects of viewpoint height and fluctuation on walking perception in panoramic tours. My presentation consists of 4 parts. First, I will introduce the background of this study. As an emerging media, Panorama provides opportunities for panoramic virtual roaming of real environments. By shooting panoramic video and wearing VR equipment, users can make the scenery real reproduction. But in order to realize the real sense of roaming experience, also need to consider the panoramic virtual scene of the viewpoint height and viewpoint fluctuation problem. Viewpoint height, as one of the important design factors for HMD-based panoramic video systems, has a significant impact on user experience and interactivity. For example, psychologically speaking, a high viewpoint brings a sense of authority, while a low viewpoint brings a sense of oppression and tension. In addition, the height of the viewpoint directly affects the user's judgment of the distance, size, and depth of objects in the scene. For example, when the viewpoint height is high, users tend to perceive more distant objects and the overall layout of the scene more easily, while when the viewpoint is low, the proportion of objects in the field of view and the occlusion relationship is more complex, which tends to produce a more compact sense of space and sense of closure. Of course, it also directly affects the interaction in VR. A high point of view can cause difficulties for users to grasp objects on the ground or low down in the operation, and can produce a narrowing effect of the interaction target. The 3 videos above demonstrate several common approaches to VR experience. It has been verified that walking-driven navigation can significantly enhance the realism and immersion of virtual roaming. In a virtual scene constructed based on 3D models, walking fluctuation can be added to the roaming to enhance the walking perception, as shown in the lower right corner. By adding walking viewpoint fluctuations, the user's sense of presence and motion perception can be effectively enhanced. Compared to the translation motion shown in the lower left corner, the viewpoint fluctuation simulates the natural undulation and swaying of the human body when walking, thus giving the user a more realistic walking experience, and also effectively reducing the generation of motion sickness. However, it is worth noting that a panoramic virtual scene is usually a pre-recorded panoramic video that presents the real environment to the user via a rendering engine, which results in the user only being able to view the video at the height of the viewpoint at the time of recording, which may be inappropriate for the height of the viewpoint for users of different heights. In addition, it is difficult to add viewpoint fluctuations matching the user's walking behavior to the pre-recorded panoramic video to further enhance the realism of the user's panoramic roaming. In this paper, we first explore the characteristics of viewpoint fluctuation for real walking in panoramic virtual environments and construct a virtual camera motion model in the walking motion state. And we extend the effect of viewpoint height on user experience during motion state and analyze the mechanism of how viewpoint height affects multisensory consistency perception. Finally, we design and evaluate adaptive methods that adjust the viewpoint based on the fluctuation characteristics of real walking interaction and the eye level heights of users. Specifically, we conducted a total of 3 studies. Study 1 focuses on exploring the viewpoint fluctuation characteristics of human walking interactions and modeling them with walking behavior data. Study 2 investigates the impact of viewpoint height on user experience during panoramic real walking roaming. Based on these 2 studies, we propose 2 methods for adaptive matching of viewpoint height and fluctuation in Study 3 and validate the possibility of visual manipulation to enhance the perceived realism of walking in panoramic virtual environments. To elucidate the viewpoint fluctuation characteristics of human walking interaction in panoramic VEs, Study 1 establishes a user-centered virtual camera motion model based on walking behavioral data of users with HMD and further explores the effect of viewpoint fluctuation on the perceptual integration of walking interaction. To implement real walking interaction, we calculated the mapping values, video frames, of the use's position in real space and the path of the panoramic video in real time, as shown in left figure, and as shown in right figure. The user completes a panoramic virtual roaming using two conditions in a panoramic video sequence at their own eye level. By utilizing the spatial position information and eye gaze information, we constructed a viewpoint fluctuation model of the user's walking interaction with HMD. As the fluctuation of the participant's viewpoint during walking can be regarded as a periodic signal, Fourier fitting was employed to represent this signal into a series of sinusoidal and cosine functions with different frequencies. The Fourier fitting clarifies the primary frequency components and amplitude variations of the viewpoint fluctuation during walking. Furthermore, as the forward walking trajectory of the participants approximates a uniform rectilinear motion, it was fitted to a polynomial. We also analyzed the user's eye gaze data. The coordinate origin was set at the upper left corner. The horizontal and vertical axes represented the x-axis, 0 to 1, and y-axis, 0 to 1. As our primary focus was on issues relating to the vertical aspect of gaze, we primarily analyzed the changes in gaze data along the vertical direction. To enhance the accuracy of the motion model of gaze data in the y-axis direction, we optimized the analysis using the Fourier fitting method. As shown in figure, the variation in eye movement behavior compensates for fluctuation in the gaze point resulting from the walking interaction. Under the mismatch condition, participants reported higher SSQ scores reflecting their conflicting sensory input from vision and vestibular system. The objective behavioral data also indicated that participants increased their lateral body sway to maintain balance in the presence of fluctuating mismatches. Surprisingly, the mismatch condition did not affect the walking speed, contradicting the higher SSQ scores and proneness to vertigo under this condition. This unexpected result is possibly attributable to the limited length of our walking path. Sensory mismatch problems might become more pronounced in longer paths, leading participants to slow their walking speed or even terminate the experiment. The indicator suggests that when the visual feedback of viewpoint fluctuation contradicts the physical movement-induced oscillations of the body's center of gravity, balance is compromised and dizziness can increase, affecting both the perceptual integration of visual and vestibular systems. Viewpoint height is also a factor that affects the perceptual integration of real walking interaction. In Study 1, most participants perceived higher virtual viewpoint when real walking in panoramic VEs constructed with eye-level height, causing a sensation of suspension. We further explored the effect of the difference between viewpoint height and users' eye-level height on real walking interaction in panoramic VEs. The experiment consisted of two tasks, a motion task and a perceptual selection task. The participants completing the motion task experienced a panoramic virtual environment through real walking interaction at different viewpoint heights. In the perceptual selection task, participants were required to manually operate the up or down buttons on the controller to smoothly change different viewpoint heights. In this way, participants can choose the most comfortable viewpoint height during real walking interaction according to personal preference. The Study 2 mainly aimed to investigate the effect of viewpoint height on walking interaction. A viewpoint height of 10 centimeters below eye level provided the optimal user experience during the walking interaction. In previous studies on the preferred viewpoint heights of users standing while viewing panoramic videos, the comfortable range was plus or minus 30 centimeters from the user's eye level, larger than the acceptable range of viewpoint heights in the motion state in our study, minus 20 to 0 centimeters from the user's eye level. The difference is possibly attributable to the complexity and dynamics of viewpoint height perception during real walking motion state. While walking, the brain must integrate visual, proprioceptive, and vestibular sensory information to perceive and understand the motion state and changing virtual environments in real time. In general, the motion state narrows the threshold at which the user's perception of height can be tolerated. Inspired by novel panorama synthesis and visual manipulation, we preliminarily designed viewpoint adaptive adjustment methods that match the viewpoint height to the user's eye level height, as well as match the viewpoint fluctuation between the virtual camera and the walking behavior based on the findings of our previous research. We proposed a dynamic virtual camera compensation method based on the head elevation angle and walking behavior characteristics of the user, which combined the fitting curve function derived in Study 1 and the results of Study 2. The height of the virtual camera fluctuates slightly in the vertical direction to match the motion perception of the vestibule. Meanwhile, the virtual viewpoint perceived by the user is dynamically determined from the user's head elevation angle, and the height of the virtual camera is slowly changed to maintain, as far as possible, a horizontal angle of the user's head during the walking interaction. Combining the user's head elevation angle and walking viewpoint fluctuation characteristics, we can adapt the virtual camera height to the user's physical reaction, providing a viewing height that simulates real-world visual experiences. Inspired by view synthesis technique, we also solve this problem by synthesizing virtual viewpoint panoramas in vertical direction. We utilize a convolutional neural network to process the panorama captured in the panoramic video frame into a translucent multi-sphere image of various depths. In the process of synthesizing panoramas from virtual viewpoints, we limited them to the vertical direction and rendered panoramas at different viewpoint heights through overblended textured sphere projections. The interactive panoramic roaming process with adaptive adjustment of viewpoint height and fluctuation is shown in figure. On this basis, we chose the viewpoint height, which was experienced as the worst in Study 2, as the baseline, and conducted a user study to validate the effectiveness of the above two methods for solving the viewpoint height and viewpoint fluctuation problems during panoramic virtual scene roaming. The results of the experiment show that the preliminarily designed viewpoint adaptation methods improve the viewpoint mismatch problem during panoramic roaming with real walking interaction. The combination of two methods improve the comfort and realism of users with different heights walking in panoramic VEs created from the same viewpoint height. The subjective feedback and objective data indicated that dynamic virtual camera compensation, virtual viewpoint panorama synthesis, and their combination reduced simulator motion sickness and effectively lowered the head elevation angle, thereby improving the participant's immersion in panoramic experience. It demonstrated the great potential to adjust the user's desired viewpoint height in real time while navigating panoramic VEs created with a fixed viewpoint by real walking interaction. The accurately matched human height perception and viewpoint fluctuation provide users with real walking interaction of panoramic experience. Overall, our research focuses on enhancing the realism of walking perception in panoramic virtual environments by addressing viewpoint height and viewpoint fluctuation during walking. This work makes panoramic virtual roaming more immersive. In the future, we will investigate more how to interact with real perceptions of work in panoramas, such as jumping, climbing stairs, and other interactive actions. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank the authors. I think the authors will be is now on Zoom, so that we can ask questions from the audience or people from Zoom. Let me double check. Okay, so the authors here. Can you hear us? Hello. My microphone is out. If you have any question, please don't hesitate. From the text, I think there is something wrong with authors' microphone, right? So microphone is out of order. So I guess we will probably skip the Q&A session. Let me double confirm with our AV folks. So probably just from the tech. Okay. Let's go with our third presentation. But thank you. Let's thank the author again. Okay. So the third presentation and also the fourth invited articles from recent published TVCG papers. The third one will be MARR, a multi-agent reinforcement resetter for redirected walking. And the presenter will be Mr. Hongqiu Li, right? So welcome.
Can you hear me well? Okay, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to present at this ISMAR 2024. My name is Hongqiu Li, and I'm a graduate school student at Yonsei University in South Korea. The paper I will present today is titled MARR, a multi-agent reinforcement resetter for redirected walking, and has been published in IEEE TBCG 2024. Okay, with the evolution of the HMD devices, there's lots of immersive VR content being released. To explore the virtual world, we needed some kind of locomotion technique like teleport or joystick. But there are so many locomotion techniques, but physical walking around provides high immersion. However, as shown in this video, users cannot aware of the wall or obstacles in the physical space, and there is a risk of collision. And redirected walking, RDW was proposed to address these issues. RDWs allow for continuous and collision-free walking in virtual space. RDW use redirection gain like rotation, translation, curvature like that, and they subtly adjust the user's HMD screen to create a difference between a physical and virtual paths. However, if the user perceives that redirection gain is being applied to them, it can cause like motion sickness or immersion degradation, so it must be applied to the user within the detection threshold. Because we can only use a limited range of redirection gains, there are many different ways to redirect users, like non-stirring, it is the basic, nothing is applied, and steer to center, which redirects the user to the center of the physical space, and APF redirects the user in the direction of an imaginary pushing force away from the boundary. Despite these subtle redirection techniques, there is still a risk of collision. In these cases, we perform a reset to reorient the user walking direction. As you can see in this video, they turn in place if they have the collision of colliding the boundary or obstacles. But we can say that if we reset too frequently, it also degrades the immersion or cause the cyber sickness. So there's a lot of strategy to reset in which direction. Like to one turn, they just turn in place 100 degrees in physical space, and MR to C, it means that they always reset to the center of the physical space. So there's so many reset strategy to where to reset. But however, how about this situation? They sharing the same physical space and they experiencing the VR contents, and it is very tricky to calculate where to reset for the multi-user RDW scenario because the user might collide with each other or obstacles in the physical space. So we considering the lots of things to determine the reset direction. Therefore, we propose a reset controller that is suitable for multi-user RDW scenario, and our technique's name is multi-agent reinforcement resetter, MARR, and this is our overview of our model. MARR is trained by the multi-agent reinforcement learning to determine the optimal reset direction to decrease the number of reset during the RDW. So let's talk about how we designed our model to determine the optimal reset direction in a multi-user RDW scenario. So when in considering to design the model of reinforcement learning, we first design the state, which is the basis of the reinforcement learning model. For each situation where a user needs to reset, we observe the user's position and direction, and it is passed to the grading. Depending on the state, we have to design the appropriate action. The action is to choose one of the resettable region, like this half circle, and they can choose each state of action. They can choose the reset direction to where to go. And finally, to train our model appropriate the purpose of our research, we have to formulate the reward function. Our reward function has 3 sub-reward functions. First, the penalty of the reset. Our purpose is decreasing the number of reset during the experience, so we give the penalty each situation they get the reset. And the positive reward is 2 things. First, if they walk a long time after the reset, it could be positive signal. And usually walk around in the open space, which can be a good signal for the RDW scenario. So visible area ratio is given to the positive rewards. And we trained and simulated the models we designed on a huge variety of the physical space, like a lot of layout and size and number of users. So this is the summary of our simulation test. As you can see, we have 5 experiments. First experiment was conducted in a small physical space, and there is a 3 layout, and we compare the subtle technique and reset technique like that. And number of users to experience the virtual world is increasing as physical space size is becoming larger and larger. So as you can see in the experiment 1, the yellow one is our MARR model's performance, and compared with other existing reset techniques, it decreased the number of reset during the RDW scenario in small physical space. Even when we slightly increase the size to the 10 meter times to 10 meter, the number of reset is still be better than other reset controllers. And finally, we make physical space very large, like 20 meters and 20 meters. MARR performance was still good, regardless of the number of users or layout of the physical space. And finally, we are to think about is our model can be powerful in also in unseen environment, which means that MARR trained in a specific environment, but for the generality, it can be performed in other conditions of the environment. So we tested in experiment 4 and 5. So as you can see there, we tested in the less and more layout, which means that, at first we trained our model in the complex layout, and we tested in the less and more layout, which means that one obstacle is removed from the complex and one obstacle is added from the complex. And still, our performance is better than existing reset controller. And also we want to know that, how about in different sites? So we trained our model in the 5 meter times and 5 meter. It still performs better than existing reset controller. So after the simulation, we conducted the user study. We designed our virtual environment like dungeon space, and user task is finding the treasure box, walking around and finding the treasure box. Physical space is conducted with this kind of a lot of complex obstacles. So we conducted for the 28 people for the user study, and they get the result like MARR performance is better than existing reset controller. Also, I didn't talk to you that we did a statistical analysis for verify this demonstration. And finally, I already talked to you that we used multi-agent reinforcement learning, and in RDW research, they used so many reinforcement learning like single agent reinforcement learning like PPO or subject critique. And we want to talk that multi-agent RL is powerful for the multi-user RDW scenario, so we compared our model with the single agent reinforcement learning algorithm trained model. So state, action, reward, everything is the same, but we used subject critique to train our model and compared it with the original version. So as you can see, the purple one is the trained by the single agent reinforcement learning, and yeah, it performs well, but not like our original version. So we could conclude like that. We proposed the model that outperforms existing reset techniques, and to the best of our knowledge, it is the first time to apply a multi-agent reinforcement learning to the multi-user RDW scenario, and there is lots of problems and lots of things to do in multi-RDW scenario, so why don't we use MARR algorithm to solve lots of problems. And we showed that our model is powerful from the unseen environment and can determine the optimal reset direction for the various scenario. Okay, that's all, and thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Hongqiu. There are questions from the audience or Zoom?
Hi, yeah, thanks for the presentation. Maybe just a short question, because maybe I didn't understand it. So you do have a physical space with multiple people with HMDs in it, right? But they are in the same virtual environment, having to collect the treasure box, or are they in different environments?
Very good question. And usually, past of the multi-user environment, they experience different virtual environment. But there is a paper which does experience the same virtual environment. And as you can imagine that someone do reset in the virtual environment, that they say that, oh, it is weird. So they have another scenario for sharing the same virtual environment. So our work didn't experience in the same virtual environment, separately they're experiencing their virtual environment.
Okay, then maybe just a short follow-up question. How do you deal with, well, collision avoidance between the agents? I mean, if the people are still in the same shared physical space, but in different virtual spaces, right, and they are being reset, there is a risk of collision between them, right, in the physical space.
Oh, actually, in the, maybe, just a moment, please. So like this kind of sharing the same physical space, they meet each other, they reset together.
Okay, all right, thanks for the explanation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Really like that you included the user study. My question is regarding the simulation experiments. I wanted to know, how did you simulate the user behavior, especially when you have different users and a novel environment and stuff like that? What was the process there?
Oh, so I guess you want to know about how they walk around in the virtual environment.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, it is the very big problem because we don't know how they walk in the virtual environment. So usually we do a simulation, we predefine the path to where to go. And in our scenario, we just select the waypoint. Actually, we didn't do experimental in this environment, but I want to say the example, just to select the waypoint in the anywhere in the virtual environment, and they walk around to that waypoint. And if they reach that some kind of random selected waypoint, the system generated one more waypoint around the virtual space. So they walk around about 1,000 meters for each pass.
Okay, and these waypoints are randomly placed in the
randomly
environment.
placed in virtual environment.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you for your presentation. This is great talk and great result as well. So I think this is a kind of like a simulation work. So maybe you have some sort of like a more control may have another dark side of the force, which means like sometimes you can have some more manipulation of the redirection. So is there any potential downside or any kind of like a future work related with this work as well?
So actually, you want to know about the future work of this model, and actually we will think about it just reset their direction, but there is lots of strategy to do the reset, like not only direction, also the position of their scenario. Or actually, someone asked me like that, if how it works if they're sharing the same virtual environment, like that kind of things we can consider for the future work. Thank you.
If no other question, I have a personal question, right? So this is the multi-agent simulator, as you mentioned. Probably it's related to the second question regarding the condition coverage, right? Probably simulate like one single velocity. And have you tried with, like, say, in the experiment, there are mostly two people in the condition, right? Or multiple?
Actually,
yeah.
if for the user study, or you mean
for the training?
If for the training, we
yeah.
just use the 2-person, and we can apply to the to 8 people because its algorithm is powerful for the difference of the.
Okay, I guess it's a function of how many agents. Let's say if I have 100 people in this room, probably nobody can move, right? So there could be the function in terms of numbers resetting as a number of agents. right?
Sorry, I didn't catch
So I
it.
guess the number reset will be it will be the function of the number of agents as well, right?
Yeah.
If you have 100 agents in this room, probably you keep resetting that.
Actually,
Is there some pressure test? Is what I'm
yeah,
trying to say,
it could be the pressure of the test, and I didn't try for the 100
yeah,
people.
of course.
But
Yeah.
yeah, you can guess that
Yeah.
it takes so long time
Okay,
to.
well, okay,
Yeah.
that'll be the training kind of problem.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's thank the presenter again. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this will be our last paper in our session. This is also a TVCG invited presentation. It will be come look at this, supporting fluent transitions between tightly and loosely coupled collaboration in social virtual reality. The presenter will be Pauline Bimberg. Let's look forward to talk. And meanwhile, if any questions for the other papers, feel free to reach out to the authors offline or after the session.
Thank you for the introduction. As was said, I would like to present my co-authors and my research on supporting fluent transitions between tightly and loosely coupled virtual collaboration. I'm from Universität Trier, together with my co-authors Daniel Zielasko and Benjamin Weyers, and we wrote this together with Bernd Fröhlich from Bauhaus Uni Weimar and Tim Weisker from RWTH Aachen University. Virtual environments are often large and full of information, while interaction techniques for such spaces are often built for either individual exploration or shared interaction. Groups of users can often benefit from mixing both concepts. After we have two users entering a virtual space together, they might decide to split up following their own interests. When now one user spots something that they want to discuss with the other user has to completely abandon what they are doing and move to another position. Potentially, just to realize that what their partner found does not interest them at all. To tackle this problem, our paper presents different interaction modes that bridge the gap between the extremes of classic loosely and tightly coupled collaboration. The phases are formulated as a general suggestion and have been implemented by us for the concrete example of exploring a small town environment. Our first phase should enable users to gain a general impression of the layout and activities in the virtual environment. For this, we need an appropriate visualization of the virtual space and the users in it. In our implementation, we use a virtual miniature of the virtual space and abstract user representations showing each user's position and orientation. So users can already see where they are in relation to each other. If users' attention is grabbed in the overview phase, they can check in with a collaborator to gather more information about the state and surroundings. To preserve the user's current work, a check-in does not change their position in the shared environment, so we need to decide on a forming mechanism. How do we start this exchange? And find appropriate ways to support conversation about a user's surroundings at a distance. In our implementation, a check-in consists of a smaller visualization of the user's environment, as well as a preview window showing their perspective of the space. Finally, if a user has determined that the topic of discussion is relevant enough to change their position and they can temporarily visit the other user, this step comes with actual travel on part of the visiting user, so we need to decide on appropriate target selection, pre-travel feedback, transition, and post-travel feedback. When traveling to another user's position, it is also especially interesting how the target selection is performed. In our implementation, we suggest two different placement techniques. In the local placement, the user who is already at the target position suggests a position for the other, who can see a preview of this, their future perspective and position. In the Vim placement, they place themselves in the small visualization of the environment. If they're happy with their placement, they can select the preview and are teleported to their partner where they can collaborate face to face. Finally, after finishing the purpose of their visit, users can either choose to join the interaction partner permanently and continue working together, or return to their previous position to continue their work. In our implementation, users could open the world in miniature again and were able to select a ghost avatar left at their previous position in the environment. They then could once again see a preview of their perspective from this place and just change back to this position to continue what they were doing before the exchange. Based on our example implementation, we present 2 evaluation steps aimed at different research questions. First, we wanted to take a detailed look at the transfer between the check-in and the visit stage, comparing our 2 suggested interaction methods. Then, we wanted to see how well users could utilize our example implementation in a collaborative task. Both evaluations were performed within 1 user study, featuring 32 users that worked together in pairs. To answer RQ1, we used a reduced task that had users start in the check-in phase, place the visiting user at a predefined target point using one of the 2 placement methods, and ask the participants to perform orientation tasks after the target had been confirmed. This procedure was repeated several times per trial, with each user testing each technique in the role of both the host, who was already in place, and the visiting user who travels to this host. After they finished 1 placement method from both sides, they filled in questionnaires, and at the end of all conditions, they crowned their favorite technique. Let's have a short look at the evaluation from the local placement method, if the video would start playing.
We compared the local placement and WIM placement with user pairs in the controlled task setup.
As the video said, we were comparing these, and the user asked the other user to place them. The suggestion is made. They can orient themselves in the space. Where are they? Where are different objects in the space, like this pink flamingo that they will be asked again later. Now they have to point to where the flamingo will be and then confirm this in a viewing position. All right, for the task we had a few hypotheses. First of all, we believed that the placement error would be lower in both position and angle in the local condition where the user placed their partner than the WIM condition where users placed themselves. And we further believed that the mental load would be higher for the visitor visiting using the local technique, higher for the host using the WIM technique, and host and local user. The host with the local technique would still have a lower mental load than the visitor using the WIM technique. For placement, we could confirm our hypotheses with the local placement being more precise in both position and orientation. For the mental load, we could confirm that the visitor had an easier time when they were placed by their partner with a local technique. The host did not really show any differences from local to WIM technique that were statistically significant, so we can not confirm this hypothesis based on our data. But we could see that the host still overall had an easier time than the visiting user. Interestingly, from the visitor's perspective, even though they had an easier time using the local technique, they performed better. They had a fairly equal contribution between people preferring the local and the WIM technique, while the hosts at a large portion liked the local technique where they had to do more better. For our second question, do users like and utilize all phases of our framework? Users were sent along 2 maintenance routes through the city that moved away from each other. Along the maintenance route, we placed electrical boxes that the user had to fix by touching buttons of their respective color with their controller. Some of the boxes that they found on their route featured an additional button that could only identify it as broken or fixed by their partner, who, if the light was broken, needed to fix it themselves. This way, throughout the environment, users had tasks they could solve alone, tasks where the other could see from a distance that they were not needed, and tasks that warranted a visit to help out the other user. Users solved this task together and were then asked to give feedback and rate different features of the implemented collaboration modes. While I don't want to go into too much detail regarding each feature, I will present some conclusions from our study here. Overall, all groups utilized and positively evaluated all of the suggested interactions, and also commented that they really enjoyed working together over this environment. We gave users in our second study the option to freely choose between both placement techniques, and most groups choose to use both again, some to just have another option to try them out, some because they actually had a favorite. We could also see that the preference often varied within a group, with one user wanting to do their own placement and also wanting to place their partner, who was happy to just being taken along for both. So this is really something that could be customized between different users. Finally, we had some requested features after the users had tried out our tasks. First of all, they would like to have time asymmetric collaboration. In this case, asymmetric in a short time. They wanted to leave hints for their partners on one box for them to check it, but not necessarily wait every time for them to do that. That would probably look differently if we had a task where the users actually had to touch the buttons at the same time, for example. In addition, they wanted to have additional post-travel feedback after returns. So we showed them their view at the target point, and we always transported them back to the viewing direction where they left. But still some users were like, okay, no, I forgot in which direction I have to continue. I would have liked to leave like an arrow for myself to continue my work there. So that's an interesting option to check. As an outlook, of course, our implementation shows only parts of the potential of our suggested workflow. So we believe it would be interesting to explore how processes change if we have more users in the virtual space, when adding functionalities for asynchronous collaboration, and when applying the framework for different working contexts. That's it from me, and thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer questions now.
Thank you, Pauline. Time for our questions from the audience. And Zoom audience as well, I believe. Yeah.
Hi, thanks for the great presentation. Maybe just a follow-up question on one of the future work points that you've just mentioned. So you said that future work should look into, well, scalability to multiple people, like a group of 3, 4, 5. What are from your point of view, the challenges or considerations that one would have to deal with then in such a case?
Thank you for the question. I'm very happy to talk about that, because we had some features that we could not really explore with only 2 users. For example, one thing we were interested in incorporating in the framework was that users left behind markers if they only went away for a short visit, so that other users in the environment would see there's someone working here or someone's coming back here, so they can decide to wait for a while. This, of course, also means that we need a proper distinction between like a short visit and a long collaboration, because then you have basically blocked a space for them. So that's something to decide, like how do we distinct that? Do we just let the person fade out from their previous position after a time? Do we have a explicit confirmation of this, hey, do you want to return? No, okay, great. Or do we want to, for example, have them fade out if they leave their target space where they went to. So we assume if they continue walking in the new environment, they just don't want to return. So that's an interesting point. The other interesting point is, of course, if we have several people calling each other, it's not that trivial anymore of whose perspective to show, for example, who initiates a call, who all is placed at a new position. We could place several users. Do we just place them in a bunch? Do we optimize placement for every person? So there's a lot of potential there, I think.
Right, yeah, thank you. I think also with this nice world in miniature cutout preview, you could also have maybe a couple of people, right, looking down on the one person who initiated the call or vice versa. Thank you.
I just have a very quick question before we end the session. So is that, what do you think about some other measurement of the system? For example, let's say the task completion time, users' gaze distribution, how often or how long do we look at each other in this kind of measurable and trackable measurement of the system?
I think gaze distribution would have been really interesting to explore, especially because we had like several visualization at the same time. We decided against task completion because like we had to study with several people coming in. They usually also like talk to each other, wanted to maybe redo a placement, so we told them it's not about efficiency, just see how well you can work with this. So this is why we did not look too much into completion time.
There's a specific instruction.
So especially like in the freer second task, people just had fun with each other. So you wouldn't really get much from efficiency there.
That makes sense.
Because they enjoyed using it, which was great, but
Thank you. I think this ends our session for Navigation Locomotion 2, and thank you everybody to participate this session, and thank the authors for their presentation again. Thank you.